Hi, Arman. It's amazing to have you. What do you do? Who are you? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Um, yeah, it feels great to be here. I'm also very excited. This was something we were talking with Franziska before the show, that how excited we were. And obviously, I'm also reflecting that excitement. And we start with the toughest question, right? Who I am and what I do. I mean, what I do is pretty simple. Who I am is, I think nowadays I'm an entrepreneur, and I hate saying that because obviously I'm not a good entrepreneur. I don't believe that's something that you can learn to do. So it's a little bit against what I preach in life. But I'm basically an engineer, a software engineer, a software architect, an engineering manager. I teach people. So I'm also a lecturer at universities. I'm a person of communities and doing stuff for other people. I have a couple of hobbies as well. So it's a whole mixture of. It's almost like a ratatouille, um, if if I pronounce that correctly. And yeah, a whole lot of mixture of a lot of things. And I think we have the next 5 hours to talk about this, right? So
Of
we'll have.
course, yes, five
Yeah,
hours.
great.
That's what we started out or was intended to do.
Yeah. So we'll have enough time to cover all of those. What I do is right now I'm running a company called Coyotiv, and that is a next generation software engineering ecosystem that combines training, state of the art, or maybe a little bit more than that, software engineering education coupled with creating products and services for the world and for other companies.
That
It's
sounds
very
cool.
briefly what I do.
Let's focus on the latter part because that's also how we interacted quite a lot in the last weeks, which was because of Coyote. And you have a School of Software Engineering coming up. What is that about?
Um, so I've been an engineering manager for about 10 years now. And I always had the issue of not finding talent, but finding people who can actually discern good practices from bad practices and who can operate with a mindset of delivering value. And, I was a teaching assistant at the university for several years before I became an engineer. And I saw firsthand when I first taught Introduction to Computer Science how ineffective that teaching methodology is. And basically, universities right now struggle to produce engineers who can meet the demands of the industry. So when I became an engineering manager a couple of years after that, I was like, okay, we're going to design a program, a summer camp that will run for 2 months. And this was back in 2011. So it was almost 9 years ago, more than 9 years ago, actually. And I was like, we're going to design a new program and we're going to create a new generation of software engineers from scratch and help them enter the industry. This was wildly successful. And we started with 30 engineers or candidates, let's say, and then we hired 12 of them and worked with them. And it was an absolute success. We loved working with them. Obviously, they went on with their careers at different companies. Everybody loved them and their work and their mindset and approach. And it was so good that we continued doing it in 2012 and 13. And I have been teaching at different capacities in different places and occasions ever since. So I now wanted to bring this into a new kind of an online school where we take the same mindset, apply the modern software engineering techniques and full stack web development with JavaScript. So modern technologies, modern approaches with a similar mindset of value delivery and being very focused on real production grade work, and create a school. So it's for people who want to switch careers and start a tech career, basically as a software engineer, or it's for people who just graduated from college and who want to have, a little bit of an extra training, or almost like training wheels before they enter the industry, before they go job hunting. Or some seasoned engineers from different fields when they want to switch over to software engineering and full stack web development. So we cover a wide range of topics that make you that will make you a popular engineer, totally in demand with your hard skills as well as soft skills. And you already know I hate the distinction. The naming is terrible between hard skills and soft skills. Maybe if it were the other way around, that would be better.
Arman, I've been told that it's called professional skills now.
Okay. That's even worse.
Why?
Which one is professional skills? Coding or communication? Like, which one is unprofessional?
I think they would categorize the communication part under professional.
Yeah, so there's always a challenge in naming these things because people try to pose these as opposite things. Like there are the technical skills, you need to know a certain programming language, and then you have to be good with people. They are not contradicting. They're not opposite things. So it's not hard versus soft or professional versus unprofessional. It's just being a decent human being and knowing a trade. And
I was going to say human skills, right?
Yeah, it's
all human skills. But I did hear sort of the difference being professional skills and functional skills, and functional then being sort of the coding aspect of it all. And I see your confused face.
Because then that implies the other ones are non-functional, or worse, dysfunctional. Doesn't make any sense at all.
I guess we, as humans, we just have to categorize, right? It's in our nature to want to sort things and to make, to use a coding terminology.
I mean, we
to
can
make
say
classes, you know?
Yeah, I completely get that. How about this? Computer-related skills versus human-related skills. Or as you said, human skills versus computer skills.
But then we could argue if the computer-related skills aren't human, you know? If we look at straight sort of distinction between machine and person, then probably is. But then again, I get a lot of the time, I get asked like, me also obviously managing 3 teams, and then people ask me like, so what do, you know, coders, programmers, developers, however you want to call them, do? And I jokingly often say like, they are the people who know how to talk to machines.
Mm-hmm.
And this is essentially what it's about, right? You are a translator in a way. You are sort of an interpreter, and you interpret the human word to the machine and back. And this is what also, when we look at, you know, code that's easy to read, for example, easy to digest, I think that goes into the same vein. And I just want to circle back a little bit to the Coyotiv aspect. It seems like you are quite the veteran in sort of what they call boot camp education, because it sounds like it goes back quite a bit. And you've had your experiences, and how many people would you say have you educated altogether in your career as a tutor, teacher, educator, engineer?
I think, I don't know, more than 1,000, definitely more than 1,000.
Nice.
And then there are obviously lateral things, because I'm also very active on YouTube, and I'm publishing all of the trainings, or well, let's say most of them, for free on YouTube. So at a certain point, I think we have to count how many people watch those and, you know, educate themselves with those content that I produce. And maybe it would be on the order of 10,000 or something.
Nice. And how many of those would you say, I'm all about numbers now, right? I'm going sort of into the numbers game. How many of those would you say have you helped find a job, like a permanent job in
Yeah.
engineering?
Probably about a couple hundred
Wow.
with personal care, personal help, um, either professionally or, for my students at the university, using my network, or for friends and family. I also, at a certain point when I was at UNU, I kind of trafficked software engineers from Turkey into Germany.
What is that all about? Do tell.
You know, there is this blue card in Germany, which is a great
Of
visa
course.
for highly skilled professional people. And living in Germany has its benefits. And then in Turkey, there are tons of highly skilled professionals that are, looking for the next adventure in their lives. And therefore, it's a great match. It's a great fit. They want to be out there in the industry, in the world, and they want to continue their trade and improve on it. And here in Germany, there's a huge void in talent. So local talent is, I don't know. You have the numbers on this. You know this much better than I do.
I do. I do. Like I looked into the numbers and I get more frustrated the more I read and the more I see. And I think it's down to the fact that in Germany, and I've been through that because I've been to Bavarian grammar school, right? And I had 9 years of Latin and that taught me to write well and to communicate well and so forth. But there is not a big, okay, this is 20 years later, I have to add, but still, I don't see it that in Germany it's ingrained into our education. And then
Yeah.
it's like, there's so much focus on sort of the non-essential things, and then digital skills and technical skills are not being placed front and center. And
Yeah.
then we have a situation where we have a lower output of talent that we could have. And then within that talent pool, we have a very, very low percentage of diversity, like really, really low.
Yeah.
And I've studied the numbers. I've seen how the numbers go down even throughout the studies when we look at purely university. And Germany is also a country where you have high emphasis on vocational training, so that shouldn't be disregarded. But I think it's even worse there. I think uni at least gives women some kind of chance. But what I've heard from people that studied, as we say in German, informatics, right, computer science, horrible, like professors are discriminating and so forth.
Yeah.
And what I do see, I see that as a hiring manager, and I see that in other aspects as well, is that you can't even just look at the German market when you hire. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to go to beyond the borders. You have to go to Europe. I was in a situation I even hired people from further out, and of course there's this whole debate: do we count Turkey as being in Europe or not? That can be debated, but I do feel that there is a very high drive of people who have the talent, who have the skills, who have the drive to learn more.
Yeah.
And they come to Germany, and then they have actually really, really big careers here in this country.
Yeah. And I also have a lot of stories to tell about hiring a diverse team.
The joys, right? The joys. Let's go back to your initiative, and the people will probably be curious about that. But why did you call it Coyotiv?
So, full disclosure, this was kind of Franziska's part to figure out the exact wording, but here's my take on it. The story is, I love the Roadrunner show, the cartoon, and I love the coyote there, and I love how inventive it is. I kind of call it playfully inventive. On every episode, it invents even new rules of physics to bend the reality, and that's what I like. And it's chasing the Roadrunner, and it's like a never-ending chase. And the juxtaposition is we're also chasing agility and delivering value. And it's always out of reach because that's the nature of law of nature. But there's a catch. In real life, coyotes run faster than roadrunners. So what we'll learn from this exercise is the coyote in the cartoon didn't really need to invent any of those things. It could just run. It's doing it for the fun of it, for just inventing those things. And it's just absolutely gorgeous to do that and, enjoying the process. And that's what we do. The one glitch that we didn't figure out yet, it might imply that we don't have concrete results. And that was kind of where you came into play, Franziska. How do you explain that?
I'm supposed to figure that out now, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm much more well placed sort of in the whole realm of, and I think we went into this, right? About sort of what does the coyote stand for, because that's what it goes back to, obviously. And in my head, like being the storyteller that I am, I had like this whole persona crafted where the coyote, goes on their journey and experiments and becomes a software engineer on this journey. And it was just, I let my mind wander. And it's really cool to think about that and to even think about, what kind of spirit animal or what kind of spirit animals do software engineers have, right?
Yeah.
And yours appears to be a coyote.
I think one good take on it is in certain literature and myths in Latin America, I guess, coyotes are shapeshifters. And I think there's an allegory there where you change your careers and become a software engineer. You shapeshift into tech, into becoming a software engineer, and we help you do that. There's also that aspect. Nice. But this is still in the works. I think we're going to figure this out later.
Can't wait for all the stories to come out, right? And to see what the coyote is up to. Or maybe the coyotes. Maybe it's a whole tribe, a whole herd. Or how do you call a pack? A pack. That's the time when you realize that you're not a native English speaker, when you have like 3 different words for flocks of animals, but you don't know which one, right? And then there it is, and then you have other situations where you have perfect English and then people are like, oh, your English is so fancy. But then we realize, and that's what I experience in the workplace a lot too, is like especially with software engineers, funnily enough, very good English, and then you have these situations where it's super elaborate, and then other situations where you're just looking for the basic things and and you scramble for words. But that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it genuine. The thing is, and I think our story in a way also goes back to sort of shape-shifting and transforming, because we met up in person. When was that? I think that was in October. It was actually in October, I think. And you were giving the crash course, the JavaScript crash course in the Women Tech Makers Berlin.
Yep.
And I wrote a blog post about this on the Coyotiv blog.
Yes.
How we met. I vividly remember this, and I also describe it in the blog post, obviously, where I was at the meetup because Natalie, who's the founder of Women Tech Makers, basically just sent me there. She was like, Franziska, go there. And I was super tired, as I am on some days, being chronically ill, and I was just like, oh. And then I was standing there looking for food, and then you came up to me, and we ended up exchanging. And I actually had to go home early because I was actually not feeling well.
Yeah.
And the light was really harsh, and I was like, oh my God, I can't stay longer. But I had watched your video beforehand, and what I really noticed about the video was your expressiveness in front of the crowd. Like you were walking back and forth and you were using your hands very much, and you made a lot of JavaScript jokes. I have to say. So Arman, what is it about you and JavaScript? What's that love story all about? Like, we want to know all the secrets.
Okay, the biggest secret, full disclosure, it's not my favorite language.
What?
See, my favorite language is actually Swift. But I also love JavaScript, and my life is kind of dedicated to it. I found out a company biography that I wrote in 2010 for our webpage back then, and it stated I'm working in the service of JavaScript to expand its reach and so on and so forth 10 years ago. And people were laughing at me back then. I love it because it's very easy to learn. It's very easy to do stuff that works everywhere. And very easy to express yourself and your ideas. You know, the first thing I do when I start teaching JavaScript is changing the background color of Google's homepage in the browser. And people go nuts about it. Like with a single line of code with like 40 characters, you just punch in 40 characters and then you have a different background color for Google's homepage. And that is the power of expression. So languages are tools which we use in order to express ourselves. And computer languages are no different. And I think JavaScript is the best in this context because it works in the browser, it works on the back end, works on your mobile phone, and you can do pretty much anything with it. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next couple of minutes. It's basically limitless. Yeah, I had a very funny story. I think it was a conference in Netherlands, and I was the second speaker. That was the keynote, and then I was talking. The keynote was mathematical capabilities of JavaScript. There was a world-renowned professor talking about it, and he was like, JavaScript's numerical capabilities are very limited. You cannot use it for academic purposes or for professional computations. And I was doing the next talk on machine learning and brain signals.
I can kind of imagine what you're going to say.
Demonstrating it in real time, live, during the conference talk. And the speaker was sitting in the front seat. I was like, I'm red right now. I think I'm also red right now. I was also red back then. I hate to say it, but it works. JavaScript works for numerical analysis, and you can do amazing applications with it. That's why I love it. It's very easy to teach, and you can do anything with it. That's the only reason. It's very practical. There's no other attachment to it. And I have to repeat, I like Swift better. Like if Swift were in the same position, I would definitely use Swift for everything.
Yeah, you completely blew my mind now, because for me you are so associated with JavaScript and, you know, advocacy for JavaScript, evangelism, if you want to call it. It sounds very much like you had sort of a mic drop moment, right? Where you're like going on this, like I come from, well, I don't come from, but I'm knee deep into hip hop culture, right? And in hip hop culture, it's like this whole concept of battling, right? Yeah. Where you rap and then the other person raps and you try to outdo each other and you also try to diss each other. Yeah. Right. And I always thought about like being a dancer, and two things that I love doing on the stage is dancing and speaking. And I always thought about how can we actually link those two things, right? And you kind of epitomize that for me, like going on the stage and being like in your face. JavaScript can do that. And that actually, well, funnily enough, it's like the whole culture of software engineering, even though it looks a bit competitive from the outside, is actually super collaborative. Yep. And it's actually meant and geared towards helping each other out. Pair programming, for example, is one of those key examples. Yep. Where you cannot, I would even go as far as saying you cannot advance if you don't have like if you don't exchange with other people, if you connect with community, practice your craft, learn from the best, and so forth. Yep. And then take that away. And that's, I think, what makes the dev community so interesting for me, is because there's this high level of support for each other, be that at conferences, be that at in the job, be that in your team, or at Coyotiv, for example, right? And making sure that there is sort of this helping element. How would you say, how did you get into communities? What was sort of your first entry point of knowing that, oh, there is this whole world out there and I can exchange with people that I've never even really spoken to, but we can talk about Swift and JavaScript?
Yeah. Um, I don't know, it's a very, maybe a cliche answer, but I think I started doing it at elementary school. We had student clubs, and I kind of loved the idea of being with people doing something extracurricular. And I was doing weird things. We had a student club, and we were like, I don't know, third graders, fourth graders. We had a student club for weather predictions, and these were utterly analog times, 30 years ago, and every day we had a huge board in the classroom, and we would draw the weather forecast for that day and for the upcoming days for our classmates. And that's how I started sharing, I guess. And then it went on throughout my life, and I constantly shared. I was the first undergrad assistant at university because I wanted to share. I wanted to share my perspective of the content with the other people that are just learning that content. Not a professors, not a professional assistants, but a student assistant. Because I just took that lecture last year. I'm very close to the material, and I know what you're going through, and I can help you. And I think it's all about leveling the playing field. It's not equal, not at all, quite the opposite. And most people in tech don't have the support they would love to have in order to be, to exercise their full potential. And I think that's what I love about communities, and that's why I'm in those communities. I'm right now primarily involved in Women Tech Makers Berlin, and you see a lot of stories there, a lot of experiences, or let's say I see, and then I think, I can do something to help these people and, equalize the playing field at least a little bit. And then you see how powerful they become and how great things they achieve. And when you do this as a group of people, then it's even better. And there is, it gives you the perfect satisfaction in life, I guess. I have a theory about this. We are all spending energy. I quote, wasting. We're all wasting energy. No matter what we do, we're wasting energy. So I'm trying to spend some of my energy that would still be wasted anyway on amplifying others. So at least maybe I'm going to help them waste less energy. That's what I'm trying to contribute to the world. And being in a community is the perfect place for it. And, when we talk about diversity, I call it a diversity of insecurities.
What do you mean by that?
If a group of people coming from different backgrounds, different race, gender, color, if they don't have any insecurities, that's not a diverse group. Diversity is when they are at a disadvantage. They have an insecurity and a disadvantage. So I like, turning those into advantages and great stories that everybody benefits from. That's why I kind of do this.
What I found fascinating is I'm currently doing a coaching certification, and one of our teachers, trainers, as we call them in German, they said you have that coach smile at the end of the day. Because when you help someone, coaching is all about as a concept of not basically directing or telling people what to do, or as even mentoring, like I did it this way and it could be helpful for you, but to get people to their own insights.
Yep.
And then you have in some sessions you have these moments when the other person has a realization or they had a win and they share it with you, and it was because maybe of your coaching, and then you get this immense satisfaction back as a coach. And and I have a helper syndrome as well, so I understand that completely. Like you have this moment where in my case my direct reports, they're sitting there and you're like, and well, great, you did this, and then you get satisfaction out of this too. So it goes both ways. It's not just sort of one dimensional. And I feel like and Arman, that is, I think, part of your magnetism, I have to say, because you have a huge following, specifically among Turkish people. I've noticed a huge following there. You're one of those like tech stars. There was recently like this example where they even said that you are being quoted a lot in applications as a mentor and so forth. And coming from that perspective, obviously, so you've seen quite a lot of people. You've probably had your coach moments, right? How would you describe your leadership style? Because as you said, you've been engineering manager for quite some years. And what are your principles when it comes to leading and leadership specifically?
I think it's very simple. I live the life and fight the fight of my people. So there are a lot of great answers to this. And I have studied a lot on how to best form this idea of my leadership style. And I like to define it as a person who is always there for their team members and does what they do, suffer what they do, and rejoice in what they do. And there's only one additional element to that is I can also cause some changes when they feel they can't, when they feel short of certain things. I can also come in and move certain things for them. So it's a lot of encouragement, a lot of helping people achieve their ideal versions of themselves and creating great products in the end. And I think that's a huge focus for me. Like, why are we doing any of this, any of what we do? Why are we doing it? We're doing it to create value. So I always have that in sight. You know, that's our target. We're doing all of this for creating value, and we're doing it together. And nothing will be despite the people, because we're one single organism, and we all should act like one, which means, again, I'm part of that organism. I live the life and fight the fight. I had a lot of trouble with this approach in huge companies because they often want the managers to be on the side of the company versus being on the side of the employee. And I always take up sides with the people in disadvantage. And obviously, against a huge company, the employees are always at a disadvantage. So I'm always fighting up against the upper management. And that's why certain companies don't really like me that much. But I don't care. I have the blessing of my people, and they understand. And that's what matters in the end.
In a lot of ways, and specifically also in coaching, your approach would be described as person-centered. That's also my philosophy, that even independent of on which side are you or not. But I mean, sometimes you can be on both sides. I've had moments like this, right? And it's person-centered. It's what does the person need, want,
Yeah.
what can you provide to make them thrive? That's for me one of the biggest aspects. And I think we've talked extensively, Arman, extensively about this topic of diversity at
Yeah.
work, right? With the different layers of diversity. I think gender diversity comes to mind sort of as one of the first topics, but
Yeah.
then also we talked about being on the sort of the chronic illness and disability spectrum, LGBTQIA plus, and so forth. So there are a lot of different topics, and even diversity of thought, as you said, or diversity of background, in the sense that, as you mentioned, people with insecurities. And if you had to put it in sort of in a nutshell, in one sentence, what your views, as specifically as a manager on diversities are, what would you say?
That's a tough one. What would I say?
I only ask the tough questions, obviously.
So I think I live by science, and it is proven multiple times that more diverse environments give you better results. And that's of no surprise. That's even true for gene pools. The more diverse it is, the better you are as a species. And then, it's logically, it follows that you have to strive to make the most diverse environment possible. What I particularly like about that is people switching careers, because they are bringing in a immense perspective. Calling it fresh would be understatement. It's almost like another dimension. It's like a fourth dimension, a fifth dimension they're bringing in to your narrow-minded software engineering people. And I just love it. It makes everybody feel better. And it's scientifically proven that you're going to be a lot more successful that way. So I strive to achieve this on every level. Again, not only in gender, race, ethnicity, whatever, but in everything we do. We try to look for a balance of backgrounds, world thoughts, and approaches. The universe is born out of chaos and collisions, right? You have to have those in order to produce energy. You have to have collisions. It cannot be beneficial that everybody thinks the same way and does the same thing and likes the same thing. There has to be people in my teams that hate JavaScript in order for us to find a better value of our efforts. How can you make sure that you are doing the right thing if nobody challenges it?
Absolutely. I've had this moment this week where a colleague came up to me after he saw my comment in one of the calls that we had. I'm new to the topic of diversity. What are the latest steps? And I was like, well, I have prepared something for you. And I sent him the latest McKinsey study where it was, and I was astonished to see that it's they looked at different aspects of diversity, and sort of the category, if you want to call it a category of diversity, with the biggest impact was actually gender diversity. Mm-hmm. And they proved that teams that have gender diversity and have women on the team, as in plural, have 25% more impact.
Yeah.
Which is like, if you just think about that, that's a fourth.
Yep.
That's an increase of about a fourth. And I sent this to him and he was like, I never knew this. So
I mean, I always say not knowing is okay. It's not an issue. What is problematic is not learning when you are presented evidence. If you don't take it, that's problematic. And we had this huge fight in Turkish Twitter scene a couple of weeks ago. And people are like, they're criticizing me. Like, why are you standing up for for gender equality and so on and so forth. Why are you not standing up for this other diversity efforts? And I'm like, you are shutting out half of the population, and this is systematic discrimination against them, and it's purely a numbers game. There is systematic discrimination against them. That's why I'm doing it, and because this is going to have the biggest impact. And then we're going to focus on other groups which are equally important, but there's this burning thing here that we have to fix right now. And it's always a matter of that discussion, Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Of course, all lives matter, but you're killing them. So Black Lives Matter most right now. And we're going to first fix it, and then we can talk about, on an equal playing field, we can talk about all lives matter. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And I have that discussion constantly, basically. And as you know, I used to hate numbers. I have to be honest with you, but I've made it. Like, I did study humanities with a bit of business administration, so there you go. I did, tackle numbers in my studies, but I didn't do it a lot afterwards. And but I've gotten to love numbers in the sense that they help me prove something. They show patterns, right? And
put things into context.
I can be like, if you don't believe me, believe the numbers, right? And believe the studies. Of course, don't believe a study that you haven't manipulated yourself. That's always the rule. But it's the when you look at sort of the evidence, it's so overwhelming because it's one study and one result after the other. And sometimes I feel like I'm in this Berlin tech filter bubble where there are men who think super inclusively, obviously women who are very active in sort of this field. And then I step out of it. Usually that means that I go to my parents, to the countryside. And it's like completely different. And you feel like 20 years back again. Yeah. And you're like, what? This is still a thing? Like, oh my God. And that's what I'm so grateful for. Like this my Berlin tech filter bubble, right? Where people think inclusively, and I feel, yes, I'm embraced, I'm accepted. And I recently had this discussion about wearing a dress to a tech conference. Would you believe it? And I specifically said to this person, I did it on purpose. Specifically when I was doing booth duty a lot, I did put on dresses, and I went to tech conferences, and I didn't feel out of place, and nobody ever made me feel out of place, which I'm really happy about. Yeah. But I've had women come up to me and say, I don't feel confident wearing my flowery dress to work. Yeah. Because I could be looked at wrongly, so I just put on jeans and t-shirts so that I can talk about software engineering at work and be taken seriously. I've had people come up to me and say that repeatedly.
What is baffling to me is the year is 2020, and instead of focusing on delivering value and minimizing our cost to this planet and to this universe, we're thinking about such things and talking about such things. But I have infinite energy. I have infinite energy to fight all of these things. And some people came to see that in the last couple of weeks. And I'm happy about that.
And you even managed, that's a very rare feat. You reported some Twitter accounts and they were shut down, right?
Yes. So there were a couple of troll accounts. Not entirely troll accounts, but fake accounts. So established a couple of years back, making life hell for a lot of people, and they ended up on my feed, and I reported, I think 2 of them. I reported a couple, and I think 2 of them got deleted. I was like, yes, this is the power of law. And I don't know. I could talk about and rant about this for ages. I just don't understand why these things even exist. Like,
But it's quite a triumph, because Twitter doesn't always shut down troll accounts. It's like they don't have like big community support teams and so forth, and it's just the fact that you reported to accounts and they were shut down.
It took about a day, so it was also very quick. And I like the interface. The German Twitter shows you the law and lets you pick the articles that you're reporting. And you pick the right article, and then I don't know, maybe I was lucky. They closed those accounts. And then obviously they were a network of trolls. They all went back to their layers, and they stopped trolling me.
It sounds like one of those bucket list experiences, right? I managed to shut down. You can put it on your CV. Yes.
I don't know. Energy. We're wasting energy. We need to save on energy.
Yeah. Talking about the CV, one thing that we also talked a little bit about, and that people are probably very curious about. I get this question a lot of the time now that I'm people lead, is how did you become an engineering manager in the first place?
For me, it was very natural. I was a software engineer long before I started working at the company professionally. Not a software engineer, but I was writing code and earning a lot of money with it. And the first job that I had, which had a team of developers in it, they made me the team lead. And that's how I started transitioning into a managerial role. Because I've held a lot of leadership roles in student clubs, high school, university, and beyond. And I was a good engineer. And my first CTO at the time was a people person as well. And he saw that I was standing up against tyrant software architects and team leads in the company and their decisions that software engineers didn't like. And I could provide a better alternative. And he said, okay, how about you lead the front-end team? And that was a first for the company, because I kind of saved the front-end team from the tyranny of the back-end engineers. And yeah, that was fun. But that's why I chose to become an engineering manager more and more, because I believe people who want to write code, who only want to write code in an effective manner, should be allowed to do so. And most companies and most engineering managers and most tech leads are not doing a good job at letting people deliver their best. And that results in a lot of anxiety, a lot of imposter syndrome showcasing itself, loss of motivation, loss of happiness. It's just terrible. It's a terrible experience for the people, for the engineers. And I'm always like, well, I can put an end to it. And I'm happy fighting for it. I'm going to make sure everyone feels welcome, and also everyone feels productive and happy and motivated and always want more, instead of, their feet dragging them to work. They want to run to work because they just like the environment there. And that's why I kept on improving on being an engineering manager. So becoming an engineering manager wasn't the highlight of the story, but keeping on being an engineering manager, I think for me is a bigger highlight.
Yeah, I do know of people that leave sort of this path after a while, because it can be, what I hear a lot is that I wrote, code for this and that many years, and then all of a sudden I was thrown into the role and I had to do it. Interestingly enough, a lot of the people that say that have a people knack. And I genuinely believe that they were chosen because they have a tendency to be good with people, or a huge talent even for it, right?
Yeah.
but still, even still having that, a lot of people feel thrust into the role when they have that for the first time, and
Yep.
they feel like, especially when they went to uni or they had like a formal training, they were trained on the technical aspect. But
Yep.
there is this blog from Phil Bennett that's called "Software is Easy, People Are Hard."
Yep.
It's actually the URL as well. I find that, and I find that encapsulates it really well, right? That it's sort of communicating with machines
Yep.
versus communicating with humans, and all of the factors in this ecosystem that are around that, because we're not just looking at a manager and report, if you will,
Yep.
relationship, but a lot of things that the company wants people to do.
Yep.
And maybe if you're a B2B company, then you have big customers as well that need to be
Yep.
satisfied and so forth. So it's this whole ecosystem of things where you have so many factors influencing the satisfaction of a person
Yep.
and their well-being. And it's not just about writing code, it's about the relationship on the team and the points of frustration in their daily lives. And what you just described sounds very much like you putting on the cape and then coming in and rescuing people.
I don't like putting it that way, because that draws a very clear distinction between the superhero and the people who need to be saved. And as I said earlier, I like to live their life and fight their fights. I just happen to be more vocal about it and have better ways of, or more effective ways of fighting it and causing a change when others don't want to take that responsibility, which is totally valid. I mean, it's insane that that people have to even fight for shutting out toxic behavior in the workplace. But that's what I like doing. I like seeing those people suffer.
That sounds positively Machiavellian.
Those people who introduce toxicity into the companies, I like to see them suffer. And I like to see the other people who had suffered for so long being exalted and finally feeling free. I like seeing that. That's why I'm kind of contributing to it.
And I'll tell you a secret. For me, thinking about that superhero putting on the cape is not about the big rescue act. It's about the heroism that we see manifests itself sometimes in the quiet things, in the things that are not necessarily visible. And real superheroes, in my point of view, they have these moments where they do things, and then there is no big celebration of the superhero afterwards, right? There's no like, oh, you did well and so forth, because you have frustrating moments along the way, and you have to think about that too. And one of the topics again this week that I reflected a lot about is also psychological load of a manager, and how specifically when you're person-centered, you kind of almost at times suffer with people. And you also, when you have like, let's say 3 one-on-ones in a day, and then you get all of sort of the negative load of people's frustrations, and you have to deal with that as well. It's not just about coming in, saving the day. It's also a lot about the mundane things that you don't really see at first glance. And that takes a lot of even psychological work too for the manager. And especially when they are sort of have both sides, on the one hand the person in the team, and on the other side the company as well. So again, software is easy, people are hard. And I mean that also, like, it's sometimes difficult to manage yourself, or to deal with those things and brainstorm and even digest at some points. So yeah, that's thank you so much for giving us all of these insights. Before we actually sort of go to the finish line, there's one thing that, or actually
was it 5 hours already?
Time flies. No, but
time spent with you, I can never count it. It's like amazing.
I think our record was once like 1.5 hours, but it could have gone on longer. And I think that was the call. That's also the funny point, where we talked about Ottoman history, like Ottoman dynasty history. And that's my whole point of, and I see that a lot in my professional life as well. We do have this view on, let's say, software engineers as being sort of this nerdy types with hoodie sitting in front of the computer and typing away, and often being portrayed as male, right? These typical stereotypical hacker pictures. And what I see is emotionally intelligent people that have a lot of knowledge beyond that. And for us, we kind of linked up over Turkish historic TV series as well. And the details. So I really enjoyed those conversations that sort of go beyond the tech world.
Yeah. Although you have watched the series like multiple times, and I only watched a couple of episodes.
Actually, I'm one of those people I watched once, and I only did it twice in this instance because a couple of years later it had English subtitles.
Yeah.
And the first time, I mean, you know this, I understand a bit of Turkish now because I've watched all of these cool, in my view, cool historic series. In Germany, they don't produce historic series like that anymore. So I love Korean TV, I love Turkish TV. And just from that, I picked up a couple of Turkish words and I can understand some basic phrases. And so I rewatched it with English subtitles to make sure that I actually know what they're talking about.
It's like me trying to watch Dark without subtitles.
Yeah, it's like, but the good thing is you always have a resource now, right? Because you can always ask the other person, what does it actually mean? And this sort of also emphasizes the fact of, if I don't get any further, I can still ask someone else. And they can explain it to me, and then I can understand it a little bit better. In my case, it actually helped me because I was going through Berlin, and then some Turkish youth actually insulted me on the street.
Okay.
And then I was able to talk Turkish back to them. They looked at me. And I was like, yes. That was my moment of triumph, you know. That's sort of, it felt like, this is what I can, channel it into, defending myself on the street. But yeah, just to finish up what basically our call and also some things that our viewers might be interested in. And this is one of the questions that I always ask is, if there is one thing in life, one thing that inspired you, what is it and why?
I think this is a little bit, it might sound a little bit patriotic, but it's the entire life story of the founder of Turkish Republic, Kemal Atatürk, and everything he did, especially the independence war, the creation of the republic, and all the revolutions that came after it, and his drive for gender equality as well. It's super inspiring. It's super, super inspiring that, Turkish women were among the first in the world to receive voting rights. And imagine coming from a 600 years world empire and being neglected for thousands of years, and then ending up with that. And his drive for science, and making sure that religion stays as a personal belief, and then the country is governed by science and life is governed by science. I think those were the two biggest inspirations for me. And obviously, relentlessly fighting, continuously fighting, and winning every single war. That's very inspiring as well. That's lust for success, and actually like turning it into a reality, inspiring all the people around him. Those are very inspiring for me.
Isn't his last name also one of those like manifestations of that? Because I know that Turkish people didn't have last names, and then when the
Yeah.
Republic was founded, all of a sudden you had to have a last name.
Yeah.
And then people chose a lot of heroic names like Shahin,
Yeah.
Falcon,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, or something Olu, which means son of.
Yeah.
But in Kemal's case, it was actually, I think it was kind of an honorific, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's Atatürk. It means kind of like the father of Turks, but not as a father in a family, but the ancient elder, foundational father, let's say, of Turks. And that's a given surname. I think the parliament voted in unison for it. And yeah, it's kind of a manifestation. Obviously, radical Islamists didn't really like it and didn't really accept it, but who cares?
Yeah, but it sounds very inspiring. I actually read up a little bit about him as well, and sometimes, as I said, like the heroes that we have in our lives don't necessarily wear capes. They sometimes are sort of the humble ones.
There are so many leaders in the Western world who didn't even achieve one single revolution in their lives, and Atatürk had so many. Changed the alphabet from the Arabic alphabet to the Latin alphabet. Purified the language from Arabic and Farsi words into better Turkish structure, and made sure demolished the sultanate, demolished the caliphate. All of these are like revolutions in their own sense, and there are many more in all areas of life, in education, in finance, in the army, and he even wrote books on geometry to teach geometry to kids and teaching being a good citizen. And that's why it's very inspiring, being multi-talented, spoke several languages, and all the while, being an awesome commander. Very underrated, extremely underrated. And yeah, I wish to emulate at least maybe 1% of his successes in certain fields that I care a lot about, like diversity in tech and so on. That's all my struggle.
It sounds like almost as if he were alive today, he would found one of those, unicorns and be a Hail Tech founder.
Maybe, yeah.
But with a twist, because his company would be 50% female, 50% male, maybe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have like hours and hours long of stories about his interest in gender equality. Not only interest, but like actions and laws and policies that made it happen. And educating people who didn't have access to higher education, that as well. And I think that's what I'm trying to emulate as well. Taking the software engineering education from the clothes of the elite who could afford a university, either financially or socially, and making it accessible by a wider network of people. I think that's a great mission.
That sounds like an absolutely fabulous mission. And Arman, we're all here to support you. That's a good thing. We will not stop the fight for more diversity and getting people from diverse background into tech, and getting them on the path of becoming engineering managers, tech leads, CTOs, founders, all of that.
Yes.
We're all for this. Thank you so much, Arman. I really enjoyed this, as usual with you, because we often have those talks, but now we recorded it. That's the difference.
Yeah. Thank you. This was amazing. I don't do these things often. I like to talk a lot, but I think this is one of the first few times that I'm on I'm hosted by someone else. So this was really lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arman.